Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Opal Elliott, and I am a community ambassador, volunteer community ambassador with AARP here in Northern Virginia. And I'll be joined today by my co-host and friend Trudy Murata. And Trudy, like me, is a volunteer community ambassador with AARP Virginia. And we have Don Harmon, our trustee technical advisor, to make sure everything goes smoothly today. Trudy and I will be monitoring the question and answer box and will facilitate the question and answer portion of our program. We will have time for questions at the end of the presentation, so we ask that you submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box, not the chat. We expect the program to last about an hour. So, why are we here today? It's from our earliest beginnings, AARP champion lifelong learning. That's why AARP Virginia is so thrilled to bring you our 4th year of Tuesday Explorers, a lifelong learning program offered every Tuesday from January through the end of April at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for you, the curious explorer. More than 60 years, AARP has been a wise friend and a fierce defender, helping individuals ensure their money, their health, their happiness live as long as they do. And AARP has earned that reputation as a wise friend and fierce defender through trusted information, tools, advocacy designed to protect the health and financial security of older adults and Americans and empower them to choose how they live their life. But we also have a lot of fun too. So we just don't do serious subjects. We have things like AARP on tap and game day. But as a wise friend, we're in your corner to protect you and your loved ones from fraud, to how to stay healthy, make connections, plan a trip, learn new technologies, attend a class, and have fun like what we're going to do today, and learn and learn and learn. I hope you'll continue to take advantage of our programs. So now it's indeed a pleasure to introduce our guest presenter today, Ms. Phyllis Wilson. I met Phyllis at an American Legion building dedication in Arlington, Virginia in 2023, and her presentation really wowed me. She stood out from the pack, so here we are today, grateful to have her as part of our Tuesday Explorers series. Phyllis served 37 years in the Army as a military intelligence voice intercept operator. She has served around the globe, visiting more than 35 countries in Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, North America. She has mobilized numerous times to shoulder the duties of defense of the nation and has deployed to Iraq several times as an intelligence analyst with special operations. Chief Warrant Officer 5 Phyllis Wilson served as the most senior warrant officer in the entire United States, and a key member of the executive team managing an organization of more than 200,000 personnel, with an operating budget of $8 billion. Phyllis is also, besides all those other duties, a registered nurse. She holds 2 master's degrees, 2 bachelor's of science degrees, and a certificate in nonprofit management from Duke University. She has attended many schools and is a graduate of the program in advanced security and in advanced security. She is also the president of the Women in the Military Service for American Memorial Foundation, the only major national memorial honoring 3 million women who have defended America from the Revolutionary War to today. She's on many boards and as a member of many associations, too many to list here today, but if you look her up, you will find that she's a very busy lady. But I bet she'll tell you Phyllis is most proud of the fact that she's the mother of 8 children. 4 of her 8 children are in the military, and all are combat veterans. And she has 16 grandchildren. So now you see why I have been wowed by Phyllis Wilson. Phyllis, we're ready to jump with you into your Zoom presentation. The screen is yours, and thank you again.
Oh, well, thank you so very much. And to anybody that's on this meeting today, yes, thank you for taking the time to maybe learn a little bit. I don't know how many of you have family or friends, or you yourselves are serving or have served in the military. We run into a lot of people, and I've got a little story throughout that you never know. A friend of mine calls them God nudges of how we end up where we are in our careers and in our lives. They seem like a problem at the moment, but when you reflect on it, it was a good thing that happened, even though in the heat of the moment, it wasn't. And it was that way for me. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all and make sure I've got everything optimized, because there's a couple of short videos in here for you as well. So again, I wanted to share with you how at 20, I turned 21 in basic training. I was a little late even joining the military, but I was trying to get my way through college as part of that love to learn, wanted to do more, but I didn't have the money. So how did I end up being a parachutist in the military to a member of the board of directors for several organizations, to include a board member for this beautiful place called the Military Women's Memorial? So this is who I am. Before I joined the military, there were no letters in the front. There were no letters on the back of my name. And I really didn't even know that there was such a place as a Military Women's Memorial. So why did I join the military? I was working my way through college ever so slowly because I was self-funding. And thank goodness I did not know about such a thing as a student loan. So for me, I knew I wanted to travel. I was one of those kids that we made the pilgrimage once a year to visit the grandparents around Christmas time. And we lived up in Ohio and or Michigan when I was a young child. And we would make the trek down to Florida to visit the grandparents. And I used to love looking out the window and watching as we crossed state to state to state. And I always dreamt that someday I was going to get to travel. So that's why I joined initially. I wanted more college and I couldn't pay for it myself. I wanted to travel. And if I couldn't pay for college, I sure as heck wasn't traveling. And there was one other thing I had seen in commercials and other things that just seemed so far-fetched that I could never do that, but I wanted to, and that was to jump out of an airplane. And so when you see a photo like this, and we're getting all rigged up with the parachute on the back, the reserve on the front, more kit, and you waddle out to an airplane, none of that part is sexy, but I didn't know. All I saw was these beautiful parachutes in the sky and knowing there's a soldier underneath it. And I'm like, I could do that. So this is the part that seemed kind of cool till you realize you get all of that rigging on, and it's, you know, the belt that goes up between your legs and cinches on. And once you're all in the kit, you are not going to the bathroom. And sometimes you're sitting on those lovely benches, wooden benches, no padding, no anything, 3, 4, 5 hours before you finally waddle like a duck out to an airplane to then enjoy the next step of what seemed like a good idea before I knew, is to load into an airplane like this. You feel a little bit like a sardine. You're sitting there with everything behind your back, on your chest, and then your rucksack that now is clipped on in front of you. And I will tell you, even when you're seated like that, the jump masters that are checking everything before the plane even takes off, because it's too narrow for them to walk down those aisleways, they walk across your rucksacks like a kid walking on beach chairs that shouldn't, but that's how it was. And then you fly in the most unwieldy ways. They teach you what nap of the earth flying is. What that means is they stay as close to the ground as they can. And if there's any hills or tree lines and stuff, they stay close, as if we were coming in to do a real combat jump. You're not going to be out there for the enemy to try to shoot at you. So that's when the queasiness, and then somebody starts getting a little air sick, and it just sort of runs rampant down through there. So everybody has their little white bag like you see on airplanes. And you'll see some of these guys that end up having to use it. But then finally the doors open and the light goes green and they tell you it's time and this is what you get to do. The door opens, either the back of the airplane or a helicopter or the sides, and away you go. And it's absolute freedom. Now, until you're certain your parachute has opened, there is a little bit of angst, a little bit of fear and concern. But in all the jumps I had, every time I looked up to make sure I had a parachute above me, it was there. So that was the adventure of it. And just imagining, you get down there and finally you hit the ground with all your kit, and then you collect up your parachute and you go to your rally point and you get to turn the parachute back in, thank goodness, but you keep that heavy rucksack. So what did the military do for me in all those 37 years? And we talk about education and learning. At the end of it, I joined with about 15 college credits from community college. And the whole time I was in, I ended up with all of these degrees and foreign languages and graduate certificates and travel. Got that. Check, check, and check. Went to combat zones, served with some of the best with Joint Special Operations Command, Delta, SEALs, Green Berets, you name it. That was my job, was to make sure those guys went out on a mission at night and that they came back. And sadly, in war, they don't all come back. And so you always question yourselves, did I do enough? Did I look at things right? So that's a part of any job, I think. Thank goodness most jobs aren't life or death. But the skills that the military gave me is what I continue to lean on to this day. And that it pushed me beyond my comfort zone. It made me run faster than I believed I was ever going to be able to run. I lifted more weight than I thought I could lift. I jumped out of airplanes, for goodness sakes. And it taught me ultimately that it truly is mental. You are as strong as you believe you are. And by being out of your comfort zone, I had to build new skills, whether it was humor or other kinds of ways to cope with being that uncomfortable. But the good thing is, like we always would say, you have to learn how to embrace the suck. When things sucked so terribly, you were freezing cold, you were wet, you hadn't had a hot meal in several days. That's when our humor got to be the best, I think. We all understood that. And when we reflect, the friends that I made over those years, we don't remember the sunny, beautiful 72 degrees and a breeze kind of a day when we were out training. We sure do remember when we were cold and it rained so hard it felt like needles hitting our skin. Those are the days we remember, and we reflect on those and we laugh about it now. But it's what bonded us together. It is the tougher times, I think, in our lives that still to this day make me closer to the people that I work with than those that are like smooth sailing. So now I get to work at the Military Women's Memorial. And at this memorial, after I retired from the Army in 2018, I had barely heard about the memorial. But they had an opportunity to apply for a position as the president of the Military Women's Memorial Foundation, which raises the money to operate this memorial. So this is sort of what our story cards look like. I liken them to big baseball cards in that it's sort of, here's your photo. What team was I on? I was Team Army. What position did I play? You could say that by rank, CW5. What years was I on that team, and where was I? What are overseas, and what are my memorable experiences? Now, I don't have the best of the memorable experiences. If I have time during the Q&A, I'd be happy to share one or two of these short vignettes that just make me chuckle. But this is what we envision having every woman that ever has or is now serving in the military. We want every one of these story cards completed either by themselves or a family member or a friend to make sure her story lives on into perpetuity, that we don't forget one of our women that has served and helped to defend the country. So the memorial, this Military Women's Memorial, sits at the entrance to Arlington National Cemetery In just a moment, I'm going to share, it's about a 4-minute video of opening day, April 18th, 1997. And one of the women, think about that, 1997, there were 2 women that attended that day that were World War I veterans. They served in 1918 and they were present. And one of them, over 100 years of age, spoke at the podium and said, when I served in the Navy, women weren't even allowed. And have a listen, because it might kick in with some of the other visits some people on this call, on this meeting have attended. You'll understand. But the sense and the power of over 40,000 people out front here when this place opened and finally paid tribute to the women that had served. Here we go.
We got off at the metro site, and oh my God, I looked to my left down toward the memorial, and it was just a sea of people. And you couldn't find an empty place all the way down to the Lincoln Memorial.
When I served in the Navy, women were not even allowed to vote.
There were tens upon tens of thousands of people there, all helping to give recognition to the immensity of what this memorial was and will be.
We are here today at Arlington Cemetery before this beautiful memorial on sacred ground to honor and pay tribute to the generations of American women who have served and are serving in our nation's armed forces.
It was so powerful, and there was nothing else to do but cry.
Thank you. America knows what you do and what you have done. Maybe it hasn't always been recognized in the past, but today we proclaim loudly and clearly, we recognize it, we're grateful for it, we say God bless you, and we will always thank you for helping to make our country what it is.
Well, I was sitting on the dais, and one of the things I had planned was for the military to bring the flags of the states and territories down that aisle. I have talked to some of the people who are carrying those flags, and they said it was one of the most unforgettable moments of their life because people were reaching out and touching those flags. It meant so much to them.
I am Captain Linda Bray. I stand for the women who served in Grenada, Panama, and the Gulf War.
It was overwhelming. It was a feeling of pride. It was a feeling of camaraderie to see so many women in one place. And to have them still wearing their hats or maybe their ribbons on their suit.
Because one of the things I had encouraged them to do was if you can't wear your uniform, wear whatever part of it fits. So some of them had on their hat. That's all they had. But they came.
Shortly, the doors of your memorial will be open. Let's go down and cut the ribbon.
There are so many memories of the dedication. And one of them is a quotation from an Army nurse that served in World War II. And to me, it epitomizes what this memorial is about. When she wrote, "Let the generations know that women in uniform also guaranteed our freedom, that our resolve was just as great as the brave men who stood among us. And with victory, our tears fell just as hard." And that's the mission of the memorial, to let the generations know that women in uniform also guaranteed their freedom.
So that's the Grand Dame herself, Brigadier General Wilma Vaught, the founder and now President Emeritus. She is 94 years old. And the memorial itself is lovingly referred to as the house that Wilma built, Wilma Vaught. Without her, I don't know the memorial would have made it. Even with all of the fierce work, it was founded, created by Congress, and then it took over a decade to raise the money. But we have three core pillars within our mission. One is to remember, and really beyond just the remembering of all of those that have served and are serving, is helping to educate young Americans of what women have done all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Before we were even legally allowed to be in the military, women disguised themselves as men and served. If you note in the top right of the photos there, that is Mrs. Obama at the memorial. And again, the unsung heroes, bottom right, that's part of the video that you just saw. So we have the registry, like I showed with my story. We also have oral histories, nearly 2,000 of those. And we are the world's largest holder of military artifacts, military women's artifacts, anywhere in the world. We loan them to Smithsonian's, to presidential libraries, to the World War II Museum down in New Orleans, Louisiana, any place that we can help to showcase and get these seen by the public and to educate, not just young Americans, all Americans. We also, because our museum and education center, it's a memorial, but it looks a lot like a museum. We encourage, we're open 7 days a week to have people come and visit us and see the stories. But we also have a tremendous website, womensmemorial.org, that even has a virtual tour where you can click on the boot prints and it will take you through and see every part of the memorial. And again, as we said, is the education, that registry where we have over 313,000 stories in there now. That's only 10%. That means 90% of the women that ever served or are serving now do not have their stories in our national database. And we are the national place for those stories to be. Researchers use those. They need the additional stories to make sure that we're seeing the breadth and the width of the stories that women are actually providing in support of the country. We also update our exhibit gallery, our programs, and so forth across the board. Almost every year we have new stories going out, as well as traveling exhibits, which helps us to really educate young people about what service to the military means, but also what the historical context is. So inside the memorial, this is sort of what it looks like. We are a hemicycle. In other words, that curved wall is a full half of a circle. So you have to keep going around the bend to look at things. This is part of the permanent exhibits, and this is on World War II. So if you see that white apron right above the Military Women's Memorial logo, that is not the exact apron, but one like that was worn by Golden Girls Betty White in World War II. She was and of course she was in the Hollywood area. She would drive basically a food truck up into the Hollywood Hills where soldiers were training and what they called bivouacking, camping out. And so she would take them food and beverage up there. She also, at one of the dance halls where men would meet up with these women that would dance with them just before they were boarding the ships to go off to fight in the Pacific theater of war. And she reflected later that she wondered if she might be either the last person that guy ever danced with in case he was killed in his service to the country, or the idea that a guy that goes off to war, I mean, they didn't have obviously the technology we do now. They might not hear any music for 3 or 4 years. They might not ever dance or hold a woman for 3 or 4 years. So the idea that these dance halls seemed a little, flimsy purpose, but she understood that what they were doing was giving these men a memory to hold on to, something to fight for, something to cling to when it got really ugly in war. And I just think that's really a fascinating story to think about somebody like Betty White that didn't have to serve at all, but she did from 1941 to 1945. And her story is in our database. But if you notice also on the top right of this photo, you'll see, and it is in fact, we have a glass ceiling. But we had a young gal that visited one time and she said, boy, I hope everybody's wearing shoes because we are breaking that glass every day. We have new firsts. We have the first woman to be the chief of Navy operations, the senior Navy officer of the entire Navy is the first, she's the first woman in that role. The Commandant of the Coast Guard, first woman in that role. The first female superintendent of the Naval Academy right now. She just took that position a couple of months ago. So we're continuing to have these firsts, but these are the ladies of World War I and World War II, and even well before that, that were blazing trails for the rest of us, I guess you would say. So our last pillar is to honor, that we tell these stories. You walk the timeline from the Revolutionary War to current. But if you see some of these photos, the top left, those are the women Air Force service pilots. Almost all of those women were already civilian pilots before World War II. They had to have so many flight hours to even apply to go into this role. And over 1,000 of them flew planes as they came off the assembly lines here in the United States, or they tested them when they came out of maintenance. They towed targets behind those planes for men on the ground to practice anti-aircraft, to shoot at the target, not the plane, behind it. Fortunately, none of their planes were ever struck. But in one case, one of these women Air Force service pilots, who was a professional pilot beforehand, she's flying it, and one of the bullets from the anti-aircraft guns cuts the tow line between the airplane and the target they should have been shooting at. And so once that line is cut, the target falls to earth. After she lands her airplane, the first sergeant, a senior non-commissioned officer, throws her keys to a Jeep and says, go get the doggone target. She didn't have the nerve to tell him, I don't know how to drive. She knew how to fly a plane, but she'd never driven a vehicle. But she was not going to admit that. So she gets in the Jeep and she figures, I can fly a plane, I can figure this out. So it's, a standard shift, you got to shift gears. She bucked and jerked it, but she found her way to get the target and bring it back. And even when she returned, apparently the first sergeant wasn't that happy that she hadn't told him, because he was worried she was going to mess up the clutch. But long story short, women are willing to try just about anything. Just give us the opportunity. That's what I love about these kind of photos. You can see the cross section as time goes by. This woman, a lot of women, when we ask them to put their story into the database, many of them will say, I only served for a couple of years. I didn't retire. Look at Lena King, Corporal Lena King. She just died in January of this year, just a few days prior to her birthday, turning over 100 years old. She served in the Army, World War II, from 1943 to 45, part of an amazing group called the 68888. Nearly all of these 855 women in this unit that were shipped overseas, nearly all were African American. And so they go to England, then they go to France, and at the Normandy American Cemetery, only 4 American women are buried there. 3 of the 4 are women from this unit called the 68888. They were designated, it was the 6888, 3 8s in a row, Central Postal Directory Battalion. What they did is staggering for a myriad of reasons, to such a degree that now some people have become aware of it and have decided to turn it into Broadway musicals, to films, to plays. As a matter of fact, there'll be one at the Kennedy Center here soon, on a different group called the Hello Girls of World War I. But Lena King, there's a film being made, and it's being told through the eyes of Corporal Lena King. So she only served for a few years, but nonetheless, what she did made a huge, huge impact on a certain person many of you may know here in the blue beanie. That is Tyler Perry. And these are his quote when he made this post, when he took a photo of all of these, when he filmed them in England, dressed in costume as if they were women Army Corps, World War II. So Kerry Washington is playing the lead role in this. Oprah Winfrey's in it. And thus far, this is his greatest privilege is to create this film. And it should be out on Netflix later this year. So I encourage you to watch and enjoy this incredible story about some stalwart women that served in a time, you could argue, as African American in the 40s, when their nation was not necessarily treating them well. As a matter of fact, Corporal King actually states that when she got to England, the English treated her better than Americans had when she was still in her own country. So how you can help us is actually, this is how many women we do have registered in our database, 313,000, which is a tremendous number. And I'll never read all of the ones that we already have. But that doesn't stop me from wanting every single story in here so that for years and generations to come, people can find somebody in their family, somebody from their state, from their hometown, from the career field that they specialized in, however they want to search and find that story. We want to make sure those stories are there, especially as more and more jobs have opened up to women in the military. Only in the last 10 years do we have women that are serving in infantry or in submarines. You know, so it's those kind of newer stories that we want, but there's so many of the older stories, whether they served as a nurse, as a secretary, all of the stereotypical jobs of days gone by. Every one of those are still emblematic and important. So we have now a campaign called Strive for 500. We're trying to get every state in the nation to bring a minimum of 500 new stories into that database. And some states are doing really, really well. And I can tell you, every state, no matter how small it is, how small their veteran population is, 500 is just scratching the surface of the number of women veterans in their state that are not yet have their stories in our database. So this is how you can help us. That QR code, anybody, man or woman, served or not, can use that QR code to create an account. And once you've done that, you can either, if you are a servicewoman, register your own story. But if you aren't, we've got more for you to do. And this is what we need your help with. You create your account first, and then you can help add. We have thousands and thousands of obituaries and other documents of women that have served, but their stories are not in our database. Our entire staff is 21 people to run a 7-day-a-week, open to the public military memorial, and the foundation that curates all of those artifacts, the oral history, the research library, and raises the funds to operate that memorial. So we cannot possibly load thousands of new stories in because, first of all, the obituary is not enough information. We need people that want to be sort of detectives. We need you to get that sleuth cap on and start doing a little bit more work when you get the obituary, whether it's in Find a Grave or Ancestry.com or wherever you might think. But we do have a resource guide for you to help sort of walk you through the process as well. But you have to have an account of your own, and then you can register a servicewoman separately, but within your account, because then you can always see that that's who you registered. Likewise, once you have an account, you can then also go in and put in Betty White's name or Julia Child or Marilyn Monroe, or you name them, Nicole Malachowski, the first female Thunderbird pilot. I mean, there's so many stories in there. Or use your own last name and see what kind of names pop up. Maybe it's somebody that you know. Now, how is the jump from jumping out of airplanes? Why, oh, why would I have jumped into this foundation memorial to run it and to try to lead a team? I wasn't sure what my next was when I retired from the military in 2018. I was running my own very small nonprofit, and I was just going to take a little bit of time and wait it out, and thought something was just going to land in my lap and I was going to have my next career ready, set, go. But as fate would have it, after serving for 37 years in the military, and I wear a Fitbit, so I try to park out a ways so I can get more steps in, but it was not a nice weather day, and I decided to take advantage of those veteran parking spots you sometimes see at grocery stores and other places. So I did. I parked in a veteran parking spot and I hopped out of my car, and a gentleman very quickly said, "Excuse me, that is veteran parking." And I said, "Yes, sir, I know." And his next thing was, and it's not the first time I've heard it, and many other women hear the same thing, "Is your husband with you?" And I said, "No, I'm a veteran." So we went down a rabbit hole, if you will, explaining when I served, what branch I was in, what I did. Turns out we both jumped out of airplanes at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, at the same time. And so I thanked him for his service, but he did not reciprocate. So I knew that they were doing this national search for the next president of this organization. And I also knew that the deadline was just 2 days away. So as I went into the grocery store, I got to thinking about, I know there's 3 million of us that have served. How many more have to serve before we can park in a veteran parking spot? And either nobody says anything, or they just simply say, "Hey, thank you for your service," and leave it be. So I said, okay. And then the last thing that really made me decide it's time to take this jump and offer myself up to work here was, I thought, I bet you if I had been a man that had never served but had the nerve to park in a veteran spot and got out of that car, that man probably would not have said anything to him. And that was just enough to tick me off, to think, how many more of us? We're not there yet. I thought we were there. I was a soldier. I never thought of myself as a female soldier. I was a soldier. And then I said, but we're not there yet. And I knew the mission of the memorial. And I thought, okay, I'm ready. Let me put in. And so the one thing I will warn you, when you jump with both feet into what might be your next, be prepared for what that next may entail. And sometimes being blissfully ignorant of all of it is a good thing. Absolutely love this. This will be my last and only job before I'm fully retired. But I can't tell you how much that veteran parking spot conversation would have galvanized me to say, okay, I only have 2 days. Let me get that resume out. Let me clean it up and let me drop it in. It'll probably never happen. As you saw, it was a general for the first president, and then the second president was a major general. And I thought, I'm a Chief Warrant Officer 5. I am not a general officer or an admiral. I don't think for fundraising purposes, I have the right credentials. But apparently I did. And now I've been here, in September will be 5 years. So it's been an amazing ride, and I have enjoyed every minute of it. So what does the memorial hold for the future? I see Melissa has a raised hand. This is like the last video, and then we are going to question and answers. This is a 1-minute video, sort of shows you some beautiful aerial footage of this memorial, which if you notice the original video, the walls might have looked a little bit darker. We have done refurbishment. We've invested millions of dollars in the outside, now on the inside, and we have one more big phase of inside renovation yet to go. So this will sort of show what the memorial stands for and what the future looks like. And then I'll be ready to take any and all questions. So have them ready. I appreciate that. Here's the video.
From America's beginning, women have answered the call to serve. Our stories of triumph and sacrifice are vital to our country's history. We serve in every branch of the military, at every level, as warriors, innovators, and leaders. The Military Women's Memorial is the only national memorial dedicated to the lives of American servicewomen. For more than 20 years, our world-class education center has brought the nation together to honor their courage, determination, and love of country. The Military Women's Memorial will bring these stories to life for a new generation. Help us honor her service.
I'm going to stop sharing because that was the very last slide.
Righty. Well, Phyllis, we do have someone who, first of all, has made a comment in the chat, and she wanted to let the group know that Lena King was also received the Congressional Medal of Honor. She lived in Las Vegas when it was awarded, and her church and the state of Nevada gave her a really, really nice send-off.
They
And
did.
we had some people asking, what was the name of Tyler Perry's movie? It's 6888 is the name of the upcoming Tyler Perry Netflix.
And to be clear, quickly, Opal, if I may, it was not the Congressional Medal of Honor. It's a Congressional Gold Medal, like the Rosie the Riveters just received, but the entire cohort of the 855 women of 6888, yes, Lena was one of the few. There's only 4 still alive from the 6888. Lena King in Las Vegas did receive the Living Legend Proclamation from the Military Women's Memorial, but she did receive, and Tyler Perry had gone out and visited her several times. And like I said, the film is told through the eyes of Lena King. It's going to be fantastic.
Fabulous, right? And someone just commented, this was such great information. Thank you for all this great information. This has been a fabulous presentation. And certainly here at AARP, we feel the same way. You know, there's so many things that you said today that resonated with me. One of them was, I jotted it down, you are as strong as you believe you are. We have to always tell ourselves that. And you also said that sometimes it's the uncomfortable that may push us forward. And the other thing that resonated with me, you have to learn to suck. Sometimes it's not going to be pretty, but that's when probably your greatest breakthroughs happen, when you learn to suck. Someone else has commented, this is one of our stellar volunteers who also served 20-something years in the Air Force. Great story, Phyllis. Thanks for your outstanding service from a fellow veteran. I've been to the Women's Memorial many times, and it is awesome. So we have thank you. Trudy, do you have any questions that you might want to ask?
Don't have any other questions in Q&A, and you've caught everything in chat. Phyllis, that was powerful and impressive, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Of course. And that's why I love it. If there's anybody that has friends or family, or they themselves need to have their stories in here, please help that to happen. We have a big goal this year of 25,000 new stories, and we don't even have 2,500 in there yet. They're out there. They're out there. It just, somebody's got to help put that story together. It doesn't take long. To create an account takes about 30 seconds. And even if that's as far as you go, men or women, served or not, you'll receive our monthly newsletter, which gives great stories like we'll be showcasing. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I'll be meeting with Netflix. We're trying to bring the debut of the 6888 Tyler Perry film up here to Washington, D.C. as part of, because we have the 6888, if you guys come up for a tour, we have the commanding officer, Charity Adams Early's uniform on display here as part of our Color of Freedom exhibit. So we're working hard to bring to light what women have done for nearly 250 years for this country. And most people, when you hear the word veteran, the default, and I do it too, is I think of a guy. And we've got to stop that. You know, how do we get there? There's about 2 million living women veterans and nearly 20 million total veterans. So we are only 10%. I say only, but until not that many years ago, we were by law limited to not exceed 2% of the military. By law, Congress decreed that. And if you got pregnant, no ifs, ands, or buts. You were dismissed from the military. Because they just couldn't imagine a woman that got pregnant wouldn't now stay home and raise her children. Times have changed, but those were some of the standards so the fact that we're 10% and the fastest growing segment of veterans. I did also want to point out that I am a very proud member of AARP. I used to hate when I would get those just before I turned 50, but now that I'm well past 50, I'm like, now I look forward to when I get the AARP magazines and so forth. It's great content, by the way, really good information in the magazines.
Phyllis, I did have
Great
a question.
benefits for veterans.
Yes.
Yes.
I had a question that if someone wanted to, say, enter their sister, brother, mother into the memorial, and they're struggling with how to do that research, there's maybe not necessarily a senior, but even a young person who's struggling how to begin. Are there women on your staff and men who would be able to sort of help them massage their way through? I know there are only 21 people on your staff, and that may be a lot to ask, but I was wondering, we get calls at AARP with people always asking us to help them through a process. I was wondering.
That's a great question, because we do have a lot of, those women that served a long time ago and now they're hearing about this, and if somebody isn't there to help them, that story could just fall by the wayside. So we actually are talking with community leaders as well, where like if you go into an assisted living facility or whatever, and if somebody can help them to write down, capture what this woman will tell you verbally was some of her most memorable experiences or time in service. But we have a registration team that lives to do exactly what you're saying, Opal, is to help them get those stories in there. And if you just get it started, I mean, we can help finish it up, but it's super simple to get it started. And we can always update anybody that creates an account. It's a digital online account. You go to womensmemorial.org, top right, it says create an account. If you certain you don't have one already, create an account. 30 seconds later, you've now created the account, and then you can start getting comfortable with that. Look at it. There's a listing of like find a servicewoman, put in one of those names like Corporal Lena King, Lena King, read her story. Charity Adams Early, start doing a little research on some of these. It's a lot of fun. But when you get to a roadblock, at the bottom of our homepage on our website, contact us, phone numbers, we'll answer the phone, we'll walk you through it, or we'll do it ourselves. You can email us whatever you have. We'll copy and paste and drop it in. Or if you have a photo and you can't figure out how to upload a photo about that woman, we'll happily receive it, and one of us will get it put in there for you. We're all about just whatever we can do, but we just need help. The Adopt a Woman Veteran Project, super important. But once you make that pledge that you want that obituary, we will mail it to you, snail mail. So you can take the time to read that obituary, maybe put her name in, go to Find a Grave, Ancestry, see if you can find more information about the era, the time in which she served. We've had a couple that actually through ancestry.com, they've connected with family members of that deceased woman. And the family had no idea there was such a place as this Military Women's Memorial for their beloved to have her story forevermore here. So collectively, they're helping to really build a robust storyline about that particular lady. But even if it's slim pickings, over time, as we ideally get more refined, or if AI can do more work for us where it can do some searching and inject information into those accounts for us. But at this point, we're just trying to get more of the women's stories in there. That's the shame, is once some of these pass away, I mean, I can't tell you what my great-grandmother's names are. I know who my grandparents are, but my great-grandparents know. And so I'm worried about World War I and World War II in particular, or Korea, that is the third generation removed. They won't even know their names. So why would they even begin to know that they served in the military?
Absolutely.
It's so much fun to fall back on those ancestors sometime later when it means more to you, and you're like, I had no idea. I mean, we see people cry when they see somebody in their family lineage story up on a big screen in the memorial, and they're just moved to tears.
And I was thinking that we do record our program, and it'll go out in a follow-up email. And Trudy has posted in the chat that please, please, please share that follow-up email, share that recording with a friend, a family member, because that's the way the word is going to get out. It's so valuable, so important that military women are recognized. I had the pleasure of working for the first female Marine, General Reels, at Quantico many, many years ago. And I remember how supportive she was of the programs. And she was standing alone in a big boy's world. And there were many times when you could see that, but she was the general, and she bravely stepped into those shoes. So, Trudy, I don't see any more questions in the chat. And do you see anything else here? Any closing words for us? Please, Phyllis, any closing words?
I would just say, we post on our social medias. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, not on TikTok. And we have a YouTube channel, which has tons, the videos you saw today, but it has nearly 100 other videos, both of individual women's stories that might only be 3 or 4 minutes long, and some that are full interviews that are like 45 minutes long. All of them, to me, are just a lot of fun to watch. And so if you're interested in learning a little bit more about any of these eras, any of these trailblazers, for the Space Coast people, we have Lieutenant General Susan Helms, who was an Air Force 3-star space shuttle and International Space Station astronaut. These are great stories that we have out there. And also on our website, you can look across the tabs on the top. We have a lot of educational downloadable tools for teachers, that it's the full PowerPoint, teacher resource guide, student handout sheets that they can just print off one and then Xerox them. A lot of tools there for kids to learn about, one, the 6888 and that incredible story of what those women have done, as well as there's one on women in space, the first Air Force nurses in the 60s when the Apollo program was just being created. And the training and the education, they flew in zero gravity, all the things I didn't know until I started reading the lesson plans that our staff here created. So the teacher does not have to create those again, whether you're homeschooling or, it's public or even private classrooms, you can pull down these lesson plans and make use of them. So there's a lot of good content within our website. It's just help yourself and enjoy, as well as if you follow us on our social media, you'll then see when some of our big events will be happening here. Always Memorial Day and always Veterans Day. We have very large, very grand events at 3 p.m. each of those 2 days, Memorial and Veterans Day. We're the last major event in the DC area on both of those days. Ours are purposely at 1500, 3 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm telling you, there were moments when you were showing the video that I had tears in my eyes, because I do have a relationship with a woman who served in the Women's Army Corps, my mother-in-law, and always thought of her as a very, very strong woman. And she would relay some of the stories of what she went through, not only in the Army as a women's army, but as an African American in the Women's Army Corps. So she's my husband and his sister said they're going to pull together her story. So on behalf of AARP, Phyllis, really, really, really thank you for being our guest speaker today, sharing your valuable time. I know you must be busy, and with us this afternoon. It was a great presentation, very moving, very informative, and we hope that in some way AARP Explorers has helped get the word out, and will continue to help get the word out for you. So we'd love to get your feedback, folks, on today's program and ideas for future programs. So you will be receiving a follow-up email with the link for a survey. Please fill it out. It helps us to know what programs you've loved and things that we may do better and things that you just loved about it. So our Tuesday Explorers program runs from January through April each year. And I hope you will continue to join us in the future for this and many, many more AARP programs that we have both in person and virtually. So until the next time, we encourage you to stay curious and keep exploring. Jump! Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your energy.
Yes, there was energy. Thank you so much.